Game loaded.
And I believe that we are live with as you can see our faces, here we are. We are live with the Lessons Learned podcast. We have been away for a little while, but now we're back. You know, scheduling conflicts this last week and this week have been pretty busy, but here we are. And you're not appearing on my second screen for some reason. Oh, there we are. And we're going to be talking about today's topic is going to be about malfeasance, essentially, in video game management. Because the reason why I said that was that I watched a recent Inside Gaming video, and I'll put it to the link here. I think I'm going to link to it. Well, you can search it yourself. I don't want to, I don't want the audio to just come through because that tends to happen. But a recent announcement, and that happened. And when they were talking about this, they were talking about the fact that, they made two videos. One of them was on Wednesday and the other one was on Tuesday. And then Wednesday was like about one of the first pieces of news, which was that we missed, was the walkout from Riot Games. Over 200 employees staged a walkout from Riot Games in protest because Riot Games kept their COO from Riot Games. Sorry, you heard my voice there. They kept their COO. Let's see what the news are. Riot Games walkout. And they were like, yeah, it's, I actually made it to CBS News. So let's get it from a reliable source, CBS News. Let me put it here. And it's like, yeah, no, we had a walkout. But the way they talk about it was like, oh, we support these people, they deserve our support, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, cool. You're supporting, fellow employees in the business, right? But then the video before that is like, oh, by the way, we're going to also talk about exploitation aspects in Nether Realms. And again, I'm going to put the link to it. And I'm probably going to read a little bit. Ex-NetherRealm devs, crunch exploiting contractors was the studio's norm. Essentially, what they did, they got a bunch of kids from college at $14 an hour or so, and $15 an hour, and work them like they were full-time employees, but with none of the benefits, which is not unusual in other industries. And unusual
because they're contractors. Yeah. They're as a contractor, you're responsible for having your own health insurance and stuff.
Yeah, and they work your extra hours and crunch and all that.
Not to mention that you also have to keep track of your own taxes and stuff, and have to the government doesn't take taxes away from the payroll and stuff when you get paid from that company. It's your responsibility to take care of all of that.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's something that happened. And then the guys at Inside Gaming were like, well, okay, fine, whatever. But don't unionize, essentially. It was an anti-union thing. So based on that and based on all the news that we're going to talk about, we're going to circle back again and we're going to talk about because one of the sticking points was like, don't blame management because this is a force of nature. This is unavoidable, which is not true. Polygon, for example, gives us Fortnite success led to months of intense crunch at Epic Games. So that's an ongoing game, just like Riot's main game is a MOBA called League of Legends. So this is on current games, and that's very important because one of the things that they floated in this video is that, if you had microtransactions or they have these other things, they wouldn't have a problem. So you brought an article from Variety about Blizzard.
Yeah. This is an article that my cousin made me aware of because it was reported back in January, and it seems to have flown under the radar, and nobody, the usual people that I watch, reported on. This is about a former Blizzard employee, Julian Murillo Cuellar. Goyar.
Yeah.
Um, so he describes a following, I guess, like I guess official confirmation that Soldier 76 from Overwatch is gay, canonically gay.
Yeah.
He kind of like, and people are like, hey, like Blizzard is such a woke and inclusive and diverse like place and stuff, but he's he was kind of upset for that because apparently during his work history there, he experienced a lot of racism, especially when it came to his Mexican nationality
Mm-hmm.
or heritage, and he constantly received a bunch of bullying, constantly discriminated against. He would report it, and then he suffered retaliation for it, and it seems to it led to a lot of depression and mental health issues because of the bullying, which eventually caused him to have to leave the company because of it.
Yeah.
And
Just a quote from the article, Variety. Murillo de Cuellar writes that a female employee would joke about his sexism or natural inclination to be sexist due to his heritage. The assumption was because I was just like everyone else, and that my attitudes, beliefs were of a Mexican machista, male chauvinist. He go on to say that he experienced increasing health issues, including major depression, anxiety attacks, and suicidal thoughts. He was sent home on leave on absence in November 2010 after a nervous breakdown at work, he wrote. And also that he had great reviews at his work, and then when he started reporting what was going on, he started getting bad reviews. So,
you're not being a team player, man.
Yeah. Another aspect of this is, of course, Randy Pitchford, who has been in the news for quite some time, the last 2 weeks. First started with him essentially accusing the news media that they were doing him one dirty because
the Game Informer kind of held the Randy Pitchford.
Oops.
He's and microtransaction. No, it's going to have the same type of microtransactions as Borderlands 2. They're just the microtransactions that Randy Pitchford was referring to was free to play type of microtransaction loot boxes and stuff. But of course, he didn't clarify that during his presentation when he made the statement. So a Game Informer was like, "Hey, yeah, no, that's totally not quite accurate in terms of his words," and Randy Pitchford threw a fit about that. Essentially saying that the media is always out to get me, and how dare you make such a clickbait title?
Mm-hmm.
Like the mature CEO that he is of a AAA company.
And that continued because he kept talking about this and talking about it. And one of the things that came out was that supposedly he had, Randy claimed that that the studio approached Troy Baker to reprise a role of Riz, but he turned down the putting it down. However, Baker expressed his surprise at the claim and dismissed it. There's video of that. He also talked to Claptrack's voice actor, David Eddings, who used to be a financial officer for Gearbox, won't be reprising his role because he wouldn't pay him. And according to Pitchford, it says Mr. Eddings has paid very handsomely during his employment, and his employment made relatively generous offer. He supposedly was offered twice the scale, twice union rates. He refused the offer. Eddings fired back, saying that essentially that's not the case. And in fact, there was a physical altercation, and that physical altercation because apparently there was a leak of information to him, or somebody put the question to him, or whether or not somebody was out to buy out Gearbox, and someone who was supposedly a financial agent that worked with Gearbox, right? And when he told Randy, he told Randy about it. He confronted Mr. Pitchford about it in a low voice. Pitchford demanded that he tell him who the sources were.
And physically assaulted him.
When he declined to tell him who told him, he basically pushed him back and apparently included such grievous injuries when he fell to the ground as bruised ribs. Also, he never also got an you know, he also denied the fact that he got offered twice the rate or any money whatsoever.
Yeah.
Um,
He I believe that he wants what he wants is royalties from past games
mhm.
for because of his voice work in those games, and an apology for that incident when it came with to Randy Pitchford. Especially given that see Randy Pitchford's original defense of it, it's like, oh, he wanted it and he reveled in that role because he wanted it, like to want to do that role. It kind of those words come off creepy, but
Oh yeah.
uh, I mean, the fact is,
Oh yeah.
well, I don't know, like legally, because so when you're a salary employee, I mean, legally you have to do all this work and stuff that and not get you don't get paid any extra for it because sort of the agreement of working for a salary. But I'm not entirely sure as a finance or whatever he is, some sort of finance person,
Yeah, finance
if
officer. Yeah.
voice work would fall
CFO
under
maybe.
like his voice, like his job description. So technically, he should have gotten paid extra because I'm pretty sure anybody taking the job as a finance person in a business wouldn't, I think, with reasonably expect that they would have to do or be asked to do voice work for a video game. And but of course, a lot of my job does this, like has like some vague thing like, oh, and other duties too.
Yeah, but it depends on your position and it depends on how well you can challenge this. And I think he's in a position to challenge this, right? The reason
Yeah.
why they do the whole thing is like they know most employees are not in a position to challenge it, right? Or sue, maybe they make a legal case for it. And so it's like, yeah. And by the way, to reiterate on Riot's walkout, one of the reasons of the walkout was that the contract was stipulated they had to go into arbitration if they had any problems with their bosses. And they
Yeah,
were
no.
basically staging a walkout saying, no, we want to go to court. We want to have that option because arbitration. Here's the thing about arbitrators. For example, the arbitrator doesn't have to be a lawyer or doesn't even have to be a
Legal
judge
representative.
or legal representative. They just can be whoever they pick. Usually, arbitrators tend to have experience in this, but the other thing is that tend to be people from the industry,
So
and you can even pick the case where you actually have it. For example, if you buy any ticket from a cruise ship from around the world, especially for an American company, one of the things in the ticket will say in the back, which is a contract, you sign the ticket, right? It says legal arbitration, any problems will be legal arbitration in the state of Florida. Why? Because legal arbitration, the rules and the laws in Florida favor the companies, even though it might be Norwegian Cruise Lines or something like that, right? They want to go there because they have an advantage. They can still lose in arbitration, of course, and it doesn't guarantee you a win, but it stacks the deck against the people suing, right? People who are seeking for it. And you and arbitration is not really like a lawsuit either. It's like, you first have to find fault and then you have to negotiate what that fault means versus when you go lawsuit, like I want X amount of money up front, right? You make a direct demand. And also in arbitration, much easier to keep things quiet because records of arbitration are not public records.
yeah,
So
versus
there's no responsibility like a court, which has public records, and you have to actually ask the court to keep them private, or make a fault, decision in favor of keeping them private. So yeah. So yeah, those are some of the. We're going to come back to these headlines, but there's some others as well I want to discuss. But that just sort of sets up what we're going to be talking about throughout the hour. To change gears a little bit, which is also I think tangentially part of the problem, is that one Senator Hawley announced Hawley, yeah, Hawley announces bill banning loot boxes, pay-to-win mechanics. He's a Republican senator from Montana, I believe. Also plans to introduce a Protecting Children from Abusive Games Act. Now, this I'm going to put the link in the channel. Right now, this doesn't have a lot of chance of passing. It's not the first type of legislation in the United States. Hawaii was pushing for this as well. Last year there was Hawaiian senators, not in the
I think
Congress.
that bill failed.
Yeah, that bill fell, but not as much that people might think. But this is a Republican senator pushing what essentially is what could be considered a quote unquote anti-business bill. And it shows a couple of things. First of all, that while the video game industry makes a lot of money, it doesn't have the kind of power and politically that other big businesses, blogs like Hollywood and others have. At least not yet. But second, the fact that, and because of that, means that Republican senators and probably some Democrats as well see it as a good way of getting a cheap vote, right? We just gonna ban this stuff. We're helping the kids, right? It's a win-win.
Especially the name. I think the name's awfully cheesy.
Yeah, mostly bills are like that. The Save America Act, the Save the Toddlers from Incineration in Nearby Volcano Act, right? That's kind of titles are grandiose. It's part for the course. I wish they didn't have them, but there you go. But the fact that this is becoming public and they're pushing it, right, in an upcoming election, right? We're going to have an election in 2020 for 2020, and presidential candidates, many of them who are from Congress, will go like, I can vote for this even if it doesn't win. I have it on my record that I voted for this, that I'm protecting the kids. I don't get a lot of money from or no money from the video game industry, so I don't beholden to them. Whether it passes or not is a win-win, and that puts more and more pressure on the industry to get something done, right? There's a trend there, right?
Instead of just trying to slap a label with vague, oh, this game has in-game purchases, which could fall from anywhere from expansion packs to loot box microtransactions and anywhere in between.
In other news, and I want to bring this up because we talked about this before, and I was wondering when was this going to happen, because it was going to happen. PC Gamer tells us that the nouveau DRM cracks seem to be happening faster and faster. Rage 2, which came out I think yesterday, is the second de nouveau game to get a 0-day crack this year, and others have been cracked within days. So once Mighty de nouveau, which everybody was pushing to put in their games, and has a habit of actually making games worse, it's now getting cracked faster and faster. Mind you, Rage is one of those games that people stopped talking about it, sort of, but it wasn't the big game, right?
Yeah.
I think it's because it's from Bethesda, I think it is, right?
Yeah.
And they already are with Fallout 76. Although Rage is supposed to be a better game, the reviews are it's a good game, right?
Yeah.
But Borderlands 3 is about to be dropped, I think, later this year. So 76 was last year, and it wasn't great. So I think it was like, yeah, we have this. So other games have been cracked very quickly. Metro Exodus cracked in 4 days. Devil May Cry, day 0. That is. A non-de nouveau executable file was uploaded to the internet. Resident Evil 2 cracked in 6 days. Far Cry New Dawn, 6 days. Combat 7 cracked in day 13. Now, I'm not, and here in the program, we do not advocate piracy, but we also are not fans, at least I'm not a fan of unnecessary, copy protection, DRM, which we did an entire show about that you can find in the YouTube archives about how essentially there's a reason why it's called digital rights management and not copyright management or copy protection. It's called. It's not about copy protection. It's about managing the digital rights, not your digital rights, but the company's digital rights, right? Which, by the way, brings me to another thing: is there's a Game Dungeon, Martin's Freeman's Mind. He did a video accused for. I put up. He has on the site Curse Farms.
And
he's a very interesting video, and you might hear a little bit of audio. Okay, let me just mute YouTube altogether. I'm gonna link to this because he made a very interesting video about the legality of games as service. Now there being other videos as well
Yeah.
about this, but I think you guys should take a look. You know, games as
The games,
service
yeah, games as services
as a
fraud.
fraud. Because I think it's an interesting conversation. He comes from it from preserving games, especially online games, etc. So you should give it
Yeah,
a
I
look.
know that Leonard French, he does a lot of copyright videos on YouTube as a lawyer of
Hmm.
copyright.
He's I think the internet. They call the YouTube lawyer, internet lawyer. I think that's what his.
Yeah, so he did like sort, or at least he tried to make a rebuttal to just this video. The first video, like I watched part of, and I had to just close it out because he essentially just like, oh, yeah, I'm going to watch the entire thing. So I'm like, then you, and then he started kind of bringing up things that he kind of already rebutted in the video, but since he hasn't watched it,
Mhm.
he had no rebuttals to. So it's like it was kind of painful to watch and be like, yeah, okay, so no, you can't really do a, your legal spiel without watching the whole video. And I think he did do
Yeah,
like
he
an
did. Yeah.
actual follow up, which I haven't seen yet, to see if like, oh, does he agree with it? I mean, I'm sure overall he's going to say legally no, none of it's fraud. But
Yeah.
I think it would have to be one of those where you have to take it to a court and see if it kind of set a precedent for it.
Yeah. Comrade Jim, that's Comrade Jim Sterling, Jim Sterling from Inquisition, made a video about this, but he brought me attention this piece of news from Engadget. Crowdfunded Outer Wilds, not to be confused with the Outer Worlds, drops Steam for Epic Store exclusivity. It's only a time exclusive, but backers aren't thrilled. The problem with this is just another. It's a small game, very relatively small game, a crowdfunded game, but it's a crowdfunded game. And one of the things that they promised was it was going to be released on Steam. Now, when they made the promise, Epic wasn't a thing. At least Epic Games wasn't a thing, at least as it is now. But the fact that they have exclusivity and people sort of paid money to play it on Steam, to have a PC version of this game, right? And it's like, well, you're gonna get it in Steam eventually, right? But
Mhm.
not when we're gonna release it before that on Epic for I think 6 months or a year. It's like, yeah, no. So it's an interesting conversation. I'm just gonna put the link to this in the chat, and also you might want to. Well, that's a that's a big link right there. Let's see if we can find a shorter one. Yeah, let's not do that.
This game's been like in production. I think Jim mentioned that its Kickstarter was completed in 2015. So this game's been
Yeah,
in development
development for
for
a
like
while.
4 years.
Shorter link, so you guys don't have to trudge to that Cthulian words much. That's via Engadget. So I think I share Comrade Jim's interest on this. On one hand, you know, it's a small game from a small studio, and turning down the kind of cash I'm sure that Epic is throwing around, which is probably in the millions, even
Yeah,
for a
it's
small game.
probably really hard to do.
Yeah. And just
But
you have to cover the difference between big studio games and smaller studio games. Yeah, go ahead. Jay, what was saying?
yeah, but like on the other hand, it's like you ideally you already made all your money for the development and stuff with your Kickstarter,
Mm-hmm.
assuming that you managed your money correctly and you didn't have any like emergencies come up. But even then, you probably arguably you should have planned for those kind of contingencies with your original Kickstarter goal. And I don't know how much more it made over like its Kickstarter goal.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I could look it up and see if it was like, did they just barely make their Kickstarter goal,
Mm-hmm.
or did they Kickstarter, or did they really pitch it and make like
Actually, they
two
did it on
times?
fig.co.
Oh,
Yeah, so no,
so
it wasn't a Kickstarter. It was a crowdfunded.
okay, so it just made it looks like it made just slightly over
Yeah.
its original goal. So again, like, so ideally you would have already had all your money, so why would you need to take more money from like a a third party
Well,
big
yeah, I
company.
mean, the thing is that literally Kickstarters crowdfunded, but the name Kickstarter, I think, the one the more famous is that literally that's what you end up doing with projects like this. It's like because of the cost of video games, the ongoing cost of development and all that, you really are just kickstarting it. You're not really the idea that a game, at least unless it's a very tiny, 4 or 5 person at most group of people making this, almost garage coder kind of thing. You're not gonna pay for it the whole thing, right? You literally
Hmm.
are kickstarting it, and what happens is that they go, "Hey, we got X amount of money. We got a maybe you're waiting for a prototype." Or paying for a demo and for playing for an alpha, and then they can go to other people. It's like, yeah, we have a game, and and by the way, we have people who already paid for this who are interested. Give us money so we can do more. Or simply was, Epic is just shopping around for games that
Exclusives and just trying
exclusives, big and small. They wanna. I mean, it looks great on their shall we say on their on their ledger if they can have and they can claim, listen, we're not simply the home for big games, we're the home for everyone. And that's sort of the message that Epic is trying to say, that they're trying to liberate the market from the tyranny of Steam. And so, Steam gives them more money, so we're the good guys. And we talked about that
to
before.
liberate the market by it seems like an oxymoron. We're liberating the market by limiting what storefronts this product is available.
Yeah, we are
It's
engaging in a monopoly by using monopolistic tactics. Hooray for us. And yeah, and the less I talk about extra credits doing a blowy type of video, maybe that's a strong word, a bit spicy, I know.
well, I think the only like major news we haven't talked about was like the Sonic trailer.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah. I mean, that. Oh, by the way, that's a good transition to the main topic, because one of the things that the folks at Inside Gaming said, oh, look at the what happened with the Sonic trailer, that they promised that they're going to change it into more something resembling the original source material, but that's going to require people to go back and reanimate a lot of stuff, and that's probably going to mean crunch, etc. But let's deconstruct that, because the reason why you had the problem with the original animation was that was these decisions made by producers, directors, art directors, etc., right?
maybe even like uh the big studios themselves.
Yeah, in other words, middle and upper management decided green not only decided this was a thing, they also greenlit it and said, yeah, sure, let's go with that. This is gonna at least make us some money, so they'll go with
Yeah.
that. And then
And
when they found themselves that it wasn't gonna work, it was like, oh yeah, well,
yeah,
they
so
change it, right?
the design of Sonic was horrible, and everyone did memes. Uh, and then, of course, they kind of backpedaled on what they present. It's like, oh, you know what? Thanks for the feedback. We'll fix it. And the movie's due out in November. There's no way they're going to push that movie out, because they probably either have, they have probably promotional contracts and stuff to live up to, because the movie's got to release in November.
And
Day money, because it's in November. You got Thanksgiving, you got you got Christmas coming up. Assuming that the movie's that good, it still makes money for it to stick around long enough for Christmas.
mm-hmm.
I mean, so that's they definitely wouldn't just like, oh, okay, we're gonna delay this movie so that we can make the best Sonic movie ever.
Yeah. It wasn't looking to be a good. They started with the whole alien thing, so I was like, yeah, that's not.
Yeah, I think what was really telling is that Sega, was it the maker of Sonic the Hedgehog, was like, yeah, hey, thanks internet for complaining, because now they got to remake Sonic, because we didn't really like his design either.
Yeah, it shows that Sega didn't they sold the movie rights and didn't have a lot of control over it, right? It was like, well, we needed the money, we sold the rights for movies, they were gonna make a movie, so yeah, but you guys complained, so thank you for saving Sonic from our own bad decision, making a bad contract with another company when we sold the rights. We should have stick a consultant clause in this or something. But hey, yeah, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which proves the point that none of this is the fault of the employees, right? And I think that's the
Yeah.
thing. What we're going to talk about bad management is that while management, especially middle management, is like a ham and a sandwich, they always get caught in the middle, right? They have to put but at multiple levels, management makes certain decisions, and it is the employees who have to pay for it, right? And it's leading to crappy games, right? Talk about BioWare, we're talk about other situations. And even when the game appears on the surface to be good, eventually I think just the whole thing just sink to high heaven. We should consider the status of the people that are making these games, and we should also avoid something that I want to criticize about IG is that idea they put a lot of anti-union garbage in their video, pitting the consumer versus the employee, right? It's neither the consumer's fault and it's neither the employee's fault. It's the management, especially the upper management, who make decisions. For example, nobody said that every major game out there had to be a live service.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that was on the upper management, the Bobby Kotick's, the people who and Tencent, etc., the investors, whatever, right? Not necessarily middle management or the employees, and not necessarily a lot of players. I mean, they enjoy it. It's like it's like, you flooded the market with FPSs because FPSs are selling. Okay, that's just what's selling, and we'll play them until we get tired of them, and you run them into the ground. So sure, right?
Yeah, and even before that, it was the every game all of a sudden had to have like a multiplayer component, whether it be co-op, whether it be like some sort of multiplayer, like literally tacked on like multiplayer, like shooter thing to it, or just some multiplayer capability.
I mean, again, going back to BioWare and Anthem, that when you read that article, it's failure of management after failure of management after failure of management. It's internal politics, right? BioWare magic. That's why I talk about company politics and policies, right? This sort of the environment in which you work in, because a company is just a strong man of the law. The people in it are the make up a company, right? They're the living components, and the attitudes and ideas are the ones that make for the ethos of the company. And if your bosses have the idea of BioWare magic and sort of impose that or sort of spread it around, that no matter what happens, it's always going to come out, we're always going to end up with a working product, then, what the hell, right? You got to work on it, or you're going to leave, right? And that creates a situation where everybody's like, well, who's going to make the magic happen? Again, the employees, right?
The people at the bottom.
The people at the bottom. It's like, oh, it's magic. Yeah, magic because you don't have to do it. You blankety blank, right? And then you have, for example, now harassment. Riot Games and with the COO was accused of harassing people and creating a hostile game environment. Randy Pitchford, who now has been accused of physically assaulting another member of upper management. So if he feels he can do that to someone of that stature, and in fact, one of the things that Mr. Edding said was, I can say these things because now I'm not afraid of Randy Pitchford.
Yeah.
Right. He was willing to put up with it. Right. And one of his witnesses is one of the co-founders of Gearbox. According to Young, when the report he had, that he had two witnesses. One was another officer of the company, and then one of the co-founders. So I think, by the way, personally, I think Randy is on his way out, one way or the other. He's making too many embarrassing moves. Right, next time he opens his mouth is probably going to be the last one. At least a part of Gearbox. But and let's not talk about that incriminating, USB that's running around somewhere. Yeah. I mean, it's Riot Games creating a situation where people, opine about your sex life, and if you're going to have a meeting, it's going to be in the local strip club. It's like, isn't that, we don't take the guys for a beer, fine, but your team meetings are going to be in the strip club after, for beers and hookers and whatever. It's like, yeah, even as a guy, I'm like, I don't know. I just don't. I mean, I just want to go home. Just if I want to see sex and whatever, it's porn on YouTube. I don't care. I mean, come on. And yes, actually, there's actually porn on YouTube. If you didn't know that, I guess you shouldn't need to know that, but that's a reality of things. How do I know that? You don't want to know, but
I stumbled across this article too that says that No Clip documentary says that executives are part of the reason Telltale closed. Which, like, there's a quote from the from a Kenta Muddle, the cinematic artist. He noted that the review process where you had to show the game to the executive staff was the worst. There was that's when the episode would blow up. And you would anticipate them blowing up because often they would blow up in specific ways. The only thing that would be considered good that is that you knew what it was going to be. So essentially, we just kept kind of making the same game over and over again because we knew that it would please the executives, and sometimes some of the head marketing people were there as well. The biggest problem with Telltale was that you couldn't do what you thought was good. You have to do what you thought the executives would think is good.
Yeah, so they had a formula and they stuck to it, right? It works. And also, we heard about the collapse of that company was that they essentially turned it into a factory, right? They were churning out, they were buying more, not buying, but getting in bed with more and more IP holders who expected a higher and higher turnaround. So they were working on 4, 5, 6 different projects at the same time, and that led to delays, which meant that any one project was less profitable because the consumers expected a higher turnout of episodes, but they couldn't because they're talking on another project.
And of course, it also led to market saturation as well.
Yeah, of their own company and their own project, right? They flooded their own niche market really because the episodic adventure game that they were promoting and still is out there. People are still making them. Was a niche market even back when Telltale Games was supposedly dominant in this. So it's what it is, right? So we talk about sexual harassment, also about crunch as well. The dreaded crunch. And I said this before, and I said it again. Crunch is this from personal experience, and I think everybody who's worked with some form of crunch or another is not inevitable. It is in fact the failure to properly manage your resources, particularly people and time. How many people you need for a project, and how much time you need for a project. That doesn't exclude the fact that you may end up with some kind of crunch, right? At some point, because things happen. And I mean, we talk a lot. We sort of slagged on No Man's Sky for a long time, but one of the things that happened to the people in No Man's Sky is that literally their office is flooded.
Mm-hmm.
So they lost everything, and thanks to Sony, they got enough money to continue to keep the new offices open and can finish the game. And in fact, one of the things they've done, which depending on your take could be serious, like, well, they had no choice, or admirable, is that they continue to work on the game and put up more stuff out there for relatively for free, right? So now if you play No Man's Sky, is the game that is finished to a higher degree, highly more polished than it used to be back 2 years ago, nearly 3 years ago. But that's the exception to the rule, right? Again, and I mean, it's it's the fact, for example, QA, one of the most important things that quality assurance. Those guys are almost always for contract, and again from the investigation on BioWare is that they would get hired on for a project, they would finish the project, and everybody in QA got fired. And here's one of the things about QA. QA, not so much these days, but for a long time, QA was supposed to be the way you broke into the business, right? Like, oh, maybe you don't have any skills, necessarily particular skills to the game design, but you want to be in the business, do QA, right? But QA get paid minimum wage, or a little higher than minimum wage at best, get worked insane hours, and let QA is just simply, it's a series of forms, right? Here's a stack of forms, digital now so paper, or maybe sometimes still paper. Here's a section of the game that we want you to play. Play it over and over and over and over and over and over again, and be marking the same things. Okay, how's the reaction time? How is this? How is that? How's the clipping? How's the thing? Da 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 da. And it's very repetitive work. Very easy to burn out somebody on QA. Especially when you have no job security.
Yeah.
Right? And you're on the contract. We talked about being on contract before. So it's like, and you think, well, isn't QA one of the most important things in the industry? right? Because you want to put out games that are high quality, right? That's why they're supposed to be AAA games, right? Because they have big bucks behind them. Well, nowadays we're in the live service model, which means games never end; they never are fully finished, so you can patch it later. One of the things a couple of years ago, I read a blog post about. This also goes to management. Somebody explaining why there were day one patches, and their explanation was, well, certification, especially for consoles. That you need to cert, and that's one of the reasons why sometimes you got different certifications. Like PC would come on one time or later on, whatever, because you want to get those certifications. And the way they explained it was that certifying agencies or companies, in the case of the United States, both for, and you have to certify in countries and also for consoles. So you have to send a copy to Microsoft. You have to send a copy to Sony. But you also have to certify it in Japan. You have to certify it in the United States. You have to certify it in the European Union. You have to certify it in the UK, right? Different markets. You have to certify it in China. That's heavily controlled by the government. So the idea is essentially you send them whatever you have. They'll rubber stamp it. But you want to do it in a certain time before the game is launched, right? And then you get to work on the real game. Sort of, right? The thing that's really going to finish it. But Mike, when I was reading, it's like, well, wait a minute. Isn't that supposed to be, because it's done at the developer level, so like, isn't that supposed to be done at the publisher level? Isn't that what part of publishing a game is supposed to be? The legal wrangling and getting, people to agree to all this, the actual getting the game to market. Isn't that supposed to fall to publishers?
It should. That's why they're the publishers.
Yeah,
especially
but no.
when
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted.
Well, I would assume that they'd have to, it's just like the publishers' job's also to provide advertising and stuff and get it on different platforms. Although to some extent, I would imagine that the developers would have to at least kind of know what they can and can't do and put in their games and stuff, and what's restricted, ratings and whatnot, which could be a completely its own discussion in terms of restrictions and censorship and stuff when it comes to video games as art.
Yeah, but again, that most of it felt like it's getting it to and getting this stuff to be on the publisher side. It's the legal aspect of it, bureaucratic aspect, as it was described in this blog post. And I don't have a link for it because it's been years since I read it. But to me, it felt like, again, management. In this case, it's like upper management because it's the publishers who own the developers, right? There's the idea also that, you're working for, it is a dream job and you shouldn't complain. That's a message that upper management sends.
Yeah,
It's anti-union positions, right? Because it's like, well, if we unionize and things are gonna, like some other things, going back to the IG video. Oh, well, if there's unions and games, are you gonna wait for games to take longer to develop? It's like, I'm gonna say this, but bitch, what the fuck? Games take right now. When we started this podcast, I was estimating, it was about 2 years ago. I estimated it took about 3 years to make a game. Now I'm confident in saying, without making much of a mistake, that the average time it takes 5 years. At no point have any of these big studios or the publishers unionized. So you can't blame unions for the time it takes to make a video game. Well, we also have reports from BioWare and from a company, and by the way, it happens in different places. Like, who was stationed in what was Detroit Becoming Human?
You mean David Cage?
David Cage was accused of being abusive, and in France, which has strong labor protections. But again, one of the things that happens is that you can have all the laws on the books. If the industry protects itself, people keep quiet and don't come out. There's no accusations or no lawsuits. Then it keeps happening, right, behind closed doors. So even in jurisdictions with much stronger labor laws, you can still have abuses, right? And or these accusations therein. And if again, a lot of the stuff is false to management, right? Oh, don't unionize, don't walk out. We're gonna go for arbitration. Crunch is natural because we have to do crunch, so you have to do crunch, right? Because when we were in your shoes, we had to do crunch. So, well, of course, that's just the way.
Our day.
Yeah, back in my day, it's like, well, you got to do a thing. It's like, but why? Because that's just the way things are, right? Even though it's a failure of of the industry. I mean, again, talking about BioWare and Andromeda, Dragon Age 4, Dragon Age Inquisition, and Anthem. All these games took years to develop, on average about 5 years, and we hear the same story over again that it took, the games really were developed only in the last 18 months or so.
Yeah.
So that means and that's the thing. It's like, it's not that people were not doing anything; they were working. Again, the guy on the ground, the guy doing the level design, the sound design, the character animations, the making sure the quest lines flow, the flags of the quest lines flow, etc. It's gonna be one person, be multiple people. They were doing their job. Management, on the other hand, was like, well, this could be procedurally generated, this could be, rocket packs, this could be, whatever. We're not really sure. You guys keep working on it until we kind of figured it out what we're all about, right? We have a vision,
Yeah. It's like, yeah, but then of course still you'll end up points with like somebody's been working on something for months and they're like, oh yeah, we changed direction, so scrap that, all that work you just did, scrapped. Just nope, can't use any of it.
I'm going to give you a simple example. I was thinking about this before the show this morning. Let's say you have two people. One of them is on level design and the other person is on an animation, right? And they're working on a particular aspect of a quest line, which is very simple. The player character goes into a room and picks up a can. And that can is part of, something you need on the quest. It's a MacGuffin for the particular side quest, right? The level design has to be consistent so that when the player comes in, they see everything where they need to go. And they have to design the area, especially it's an area that gets a lot of traffic, so your player had gone there before and could go there again. They either have to decide, well, is that object an object that can always be interacted with? Is that an object that only appears or is interacted with or noticeable when the quest, the quest flags it, right? And then coordinate with the animator, say, okay, what can you do with it? How to go to inventory and all that. So there's a lot of little decisions have to be coordinated, and a lot of this stuff is taken. That's what video game engines are for, right? They automated a lot of the stuff, but you still have to go through and you have to coordinate, right? What happens when you do all this? You spend, say, a good, half a week, maybe even more, just making sure this works, and the object doesn't disappear when you touch it, or falls to the floor, or it's in the wrong place, or it's properly signal posted so you actually see what it is, but it's etc. Unless it's a puzzle in which you have to sort of pixel hunt, whatever. That doesn't happen as much as before, as it used to, right? And that's not including this when you're doing under combat, people shooting at you and the player might die or whatever. Just go into a room and pick up an object so it's part of the quest. What happens if somewhere in upper management goes, yeah, our writers rewrote that entire quest, so we're going to cut it.
Yeah.
There goes a week's worth of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. But then again, it might mean that, 3 months later, it's like, oh yeah, we have a week's estimated 60-hour runtime. We need to pad this. Okay. Well, we canceled the other quests and we probably left whatever was, basically what programmers do is that they disable them. They basically roll back enough so that your machine doesn't read the quest. But the rest is left there. Like the assets are left there, etc. Because it's much easier just to disable, to roll back, rather than say, we're going to undo all that, right? And no, we need a quest to do this, but it can't be that quest because we canceled it because we have these other quest lines in an RPG. So make us a similar quest in the same area. There's a similar things, but it can be the same thing using the same exact assets because we decided that picking up that can of, multicolored beans just didn't make any sense because of the writing. So, I don't know, a gun or something. So they have to rethread the same ground, make all the same decisions, plan the week of work or whatever. And I'm probably, depending on your experience, and if you're a video game designer, this could be I'm underestimating or overestimating this by huge quantities. Just giving a sort of a ballpark idea. They have to do it again, but now it's 6 months or 3 months to release. And now they have to encroach because they have to put that quest line in order to pad the runtime so the player has something to do so it doesn't, instead of being a 20-hour game, it's a 60 or 80 or 100-hour game. And then, of course, live services means you have to continually put out more stuff. So you never really finish and move to the next project because this project requires more quest lines, more items, more cosmetics, more this, more that, right? more drop rates, more fixes, hot fixes, more patches.
And of course, usually, as we've seen with Anthem, they're just kind of giving it to they're slightly small. I'm not sure if Bioware Austin is smaller than Bioware Edmonton, but I'm going to assume they're going to scale back the all that content, give it to a slightly smaller studio, while like the rest of the studio just goes and starts concentrating on Dragon Age 4.
I mean, again, going back to this is more EA than anything else, but also includes Bioware. Imagine that one of the things that management manages, which is money, and that means what kind of engine. We talked about engines. Oh, engines like Unreal or Frostbite. Well, you get into work, you're starting your project, you've been using Unreal for a while. Somebody from Seattle says, nope, no, we're gonna switch to Edenbyte or Frostbite. That's gonna be our new engine. And you guys have to use it because everybody's going to use it because we want to save money. Like, okay, I have no experience with Frostbite, but sure, it's an engine. And you sit and you start working on the engine and you realize that the engine does nothing to do with the kind of work you're doing, whether exploration game or construction game or piloting game or RPG, third person over the shoulder RPG. Like, oh, okay. Well, how much time do we have? Oh, we got plenty of time. We got like 4 years to go, maybe. Also, one of the things that the rank and file is not aware of is that sometimes management tries, upper middle management, the upper management of a developer wants to make nice with the upper management of the publisher, people with the money, and so they go and say, hey, listen. Make us a, they go to their employees, like, make us a demo. And they go make a demo, right? And they sell the demo to their bosses. Like, this is going to be the game. This will be great. But everybody knows that demo either appeared at a time where the game wasn't, there wasn't enough there. They literally created like a mini game to sell to their bosses, or they or there's not enough of the game, or they're going to have to make some changes. So it's like, so now the bosses, and of course the bosses, what do you do with the demo? If it's internal demo, maybe stays internal. Most of the time they turn it to their advertising companies. Go like, hey, 2 years from now, we're going to have this game. E3 is around the corner. Make an advertising out of this. Make a short clip of this. And they go and they put it on YouTube. They put it on E3. And it's like, oh, now we're committed to whatever it is that our bosses told their bosses that we were going to do because, shit, And there you go, right?
Which is funny because I don't think that panned out very well when Peter Molyneux did it.
It's a Peter Molyneux effect. And it's not only Peter Molyneux. Randy Pitchford did it with Colonial Marines, right? I think
Sean Murray from No Man's
Sky. Right? And I would argue Casey Hudson. People don't rate Casey Hudson on the call so much, but if you watch the videos from before the release of Mass Effect, especially when he went to E3 and talked about it, he talks a bigger and bigger game per game, right? Oh, this one's going to be bigger, stuff like that. And there were improvements, certainly. The game's improved. But there was always this gap between what he was talking and what he delivered. And that gap got a little bigger and bigger and bigger. It wasn't a Molyneux-sized Grand Canyon. You didn't fall into it. But I imagine being the designers like, oh, we're going to have this thing. And then like 15 endings. I'm like, yeah, but I know that you went with somebody else in a close office and wrote the ending by yourselves and didn't consult anybody in like 2 weeks or something. Where are we getting these? We only have one ending. We just have the thing where he just goes and does the thing. Do you guys wrote 15 endings and we're supposed to create all 15 endings all at once? Okay. I mean, the thing you mentioned before, people not listening, because here's the thing about any company. You have to listen to your bosses because they're your bosses. Your bosses are not supposed to listen to you. And you know what? The thing is also that we talked a lot about this sort of garage coder stuff like that, but it didn't used to be that way in many video game companies. The 80s and 90s, I think because at least they were smaller, even the big games makers like id Software, They were a room full of people. You could put most developers in a crowded room. So anywhere between 5 people to 25, 50 at the most, right? There was a sense that, at least on the developer side, they were kind of, everybody was on the same level, right? And people were working and sharing ideas. And yeah, there was a dedicated CEO because they're a company, so they need that, right? For outside purposes. But the guy who was supposedly in charge was doing as much coding beside the other guy who was just a coder, right?
Yeah.
I think one of the things that's happened is that games have become more complex, and not only to developers, but as they get integrated and bought up by publishers, the vertical imposition of authority, the sort of upper management, middle management, sort of drilling down has been imposed in many of these companies. And also because more larger, an average, I think a AAA developer now has over 100 employees, right? Between 100 to 300 employees, which is, for other companies, that's not huge numbers, but it's big enough that you're not buddy with every guy on the floor, right? Every person on the floor. You can't know them, and you're too busy, doing E3 appearances and interviews and big meetings with other section managers and all that. So that has been lost to a degree, right? It didn't used to be horizontal. It used to be vertical. It used to be more horizontal, but everybody was more or less on the same page. Even if somebody had a title that afforded them to, I don't know, get an extra 15, 20, 30 bucks an hour, which everybody was like, well, it's fair because they're carrying more of the load, right? But now, Bobby Kotick doesn't know jack shit about programming anything, right?
Yeah.
What's the last time I think Randy Pitchford actually saw in front of a computer and coded anything? They don't. Whether, Peter Molyneux, right? Used to be actually somebody who was coding alongside his people. Not anymore. He said it himself that as time went on, he became more of a spokesperson. And he made a sort of a mea culpa about a year ago. And one of the things that explains that he became more of a spokesperson, more of a salesman than an actual game designer. And it was sort of a big of intoxicating of being able to make these bigger and bigger promises. He kind of started believing his own words. And he wasn't really there with the people actually making the game. So this is, we got a couple minutes. We kind of get into solutions here. I think one of them would be unions. Certainly, I would urge. We talked about unions before.
Well, I almost feel like the solution would be to remove more of those middle management, because I think the issue is that you got the people at the top that are way too separated from the bottom, and I think that's like one of the biggest issues is that they're so far removed from the actual work that they have no idea what it takes to create a product.
Yeah. Or even, and again, we have this sort of idea that people who used to be coders, like, well, in my day, get over the idea of, in my day, I used to do this. Like, well, that doesn't work because dog agrees. It's like, we shouldn't do this. It's like, listen, guys, tired workers are inefficient workers. Exploited workers are just going to walk away, right? Another idea is that things you can plug in one person and others, like, contract workers, whatever. Oh, yeah, anybody can do a design level, right? Anybody can do music. Anybody can do this. Just throw them in the mix and they'll keep on working, right? That's another idea has to change. So unions, I think, would be a good counterbalance, especially when you talk about the publisher versus developer, the studio relationship. That has to change. We talked about that before. I think unions would do great. I would even suggest that new upcoming studios, and by the way, Super Bunny Hop has an excellent video about this. I'm going to link to it. I'm going to take a moment to do that. Super Bunny Hop, unions. Because I think it's an excellent video. Unionization, steady careers, and
the video where he's talking to game developers about unionizing.
Yeah, that's a great video, and I think people should watch it. And one of the things that says that people who are fighting for unions are also fighting for what is a situation where people are saying, hey, if the workers or developers owned more of the company, right? The worker owned co-ops called a workers co-op, it would in many ways return the games a little more to what they used to be. It won't work for everything, right? Essentially, although it can be done, I mean, you can scale up co-ops, right? Co-ops don't have to be like 5 people, right? They're scalable. But in the United States, people really don't know how to do that. In other countries, they do. Spain, for example, they have a strong co-op tradition, especially in the Basque Country, and even having. I think one company has a university that teaches people how to do co-op, right? And ironically, I would think that having more studios that are union shops would make them resistant to being acquired, right? And that's something I think one of the reasons also why their bosses, the upper management in developer studios, don't want unions, because while they may consider themselves to be part of another coder that came up the ranks, they know that if their company becomes union shop, they're less likely to be bought out by the publishers, because then the publishers have to, one of the things they'll have to guarantee are the contracts by the union, and they have to guarantee the union exists. If they start busting the union, they're going to have resistance because the union is already there. And not only that, once unions really take off, when people say, hey, listen, that developer studio there is not only making good games, they're not selling 10, 20, 50 million copies, but they're making good games and it's a steady job. That is a place I want to work in. So if I get fired, there's a good chance I can start a studio by myself with other workers as a co-op, or go to a union shop, right? But if you're a developer who wants to resist being bought out, making yourself, a CEO is like, I want this to be my legacy, and I don't want to have to deal with. I mean, that's how Activision and Electronic Arts started. But by the way, they started Electronic Arts was a collection of people who just came together because they were tired of how things were done in the early 80s. The founder of Activision was tired of how Atari was doing things and exploiting their workers in their own way back in the day, 1981, 1982. So he made Activision, right? That's sort of the irony of this. Bobby Kotick, if you're listening, you're not, but there you go. A little bit of history about your own company. And I think those things would work. They want to work for everybody, but I think it's something that has to be considered, right? And ultimately, yes, I would advise, especially people who are on YouTube and on Twitch, do not take this anti-union tack, because essentially you're undercutting yourself, right? Because you are not upper management, right? You're not going to huge bonus if you get bought out, right? It's not going to work for you. So you're not in the side of the angels. You can't talk from both sides of your mouth. Say, well, exploitation is bad, but let's not do anything about it other than maybe a walkout here or a complaint there, a lawsuit over there, right? Piecemeal because I have to do it. It's like, how about no? Let's not do that. Let's not. The ultimate people you're hurting are yourselves. So that's my takeaway on it.
I'd have to agree. Honestly, at this point, what do they have to lose when it comes to unionizing? It's the systems fail them, and changing the system, not changing systems isn't going to fix anything.
Yeah. So yes, comrades, the only thing you can lose are your chains and your crunch time too. So there you go.
Seize the means of
video game production, video game development. Yes. So that's all we have for this program. We had a little bit of technical problems here and there, delays on the internet because the internet is being what it is. But hopefully you'll have a copy of this program. We didn't have a big cut. That was good. The only reason why I didn't show last program on YouTube was because it was ended abruptly. It's like, do I make a video explaining what it is? I may do, but maybe I won't. So that's it. But this one should be on YouTube probably tomorrow with some annotations and whatnot. And if you want to catch more of our program, you can always find us here at Lessons Learned 1. The 1 is very important. We do the podcast hopefully every Wednesday or Thursday, depending on time. And I'm playing Ni no Kuni 2, which I think I'm getting halfway through the game. So maybe a couple of weeks on end, and there's a couple of games I'm looking forward to. Chapman, where can we find you on the interwebs?
You can find me at Chapelmon on pretty much anywhere. I am Chapelmon_Aragon on Twitch and Twitter, but I primarily hang out on YouTube just under Chapelmon.
There you go. So check him out as well. Great videos, especially if you like to see a lot of Mass Effect characters die over and over and over again. And also, if you want to see your prepared gay chips, because you know there's no shepherd without a carry. That's absolutely true. I mean, not my chip, but you can't deny the truth. It is totally undeniable. So we'll see you when we see you, and that will be a bye for us. Bye bye, everybody.
Bye. All right.